So we'll start with this one. Now this one is what they call veronicastrum, and there are a lot of different types of veronicastrum out there, but this particular family is veronicastrum virginicum. But straight away you can tell this is good for pollinators. Now this is a veronicastrum virginicum and one called adoration. Now I'm showing you a bit of a poor example of this particular plant at the moment, and that's simply because this has only been in here, or has only been in here for 2 years. So it's not really got clumping properly yet, and it did start with just one single flower spike. Now the beauty of these is obviously this. And these are like cathedral-like really. Now I'll hold this one up. And they stand about 5 foot generally, and they slowly clump. And over time you can get a really nice clump from them. So there's flowers all over the place, and the reason these are so low down is because I had to cut some of these when we had an aggressive wind one day which blew some of the main stalks down, because again, remember, it's still quite new, it's still growing. As I said, there are different types, and this is my most mature one. I also have another one called veronicastrum virginicum pointed fingers, which isn't worth showing you at the moment because it's just simply too immature at the moment. It's a little plant, so hardly worth looking at. So that's a good one, and that'll do well in a mixed border. So it's not fully formed yet, and it's still a youngish plant, but over time that's going to make a lovely big clump, and it will be a lovely big clump. And I look forward to actually mixing that more with the grasses, because they do complement grasses beautifully. So that's veronicastrum virginicum, and that particular variety is called adoration. So this one is an acanthus, and again there's lots of different types of acanthus out there, and I've had many different types. I've had at least 2 or 3 other types in this garden that haven't really done as I expected them to, but finally this one has. So this one's an acanthus. I will give the full description of its name online. There's no point in saying it right now, but the cultivar is actually called Rouladen, and it is a very good, strong and robust acanthus. And this particular one is a white flowered version. It's wonderful. Now you must remember that any acanthus you get, once you've got it, you're highly unlikely to ever lose it, because even if you try and dig it out, the likelihood is at some point it will come back up from the smallest root. So you have to prepare yourself for that. So the one advice I do give is make sure you get it into that right place to start with. But they're definitely worth having. Now this particular one is only just over a year old for me, and it should eventually over time make it as tall as that post behind it. It's one of the tallest, most robust types, and as I said, it's a white variety. So that's acanthus Rouladen. This plant is Helenium, and it's called Helenium. This particular variety, and I will put it on screen again, is called Fierce-Eagle. Now, I'm not 100% convinced that this is Fierce-Eagle because it means lightning strike or lightning bolt, and it's not really meeting the criteria. Now, it's 3 years in now, and this has come from a very good supplier, and it should really be true to what I've been sent. Now, that one is more like it should be. Now, obviously, it's only just starting to come out. We're in July, we're getting towards the end of July, so a lot of the heleniums are starting to flower. And I love them, and this particular one is a really strong and robust type. And it's doing really well in my garden. And again, I buy them to go with my grasses because they do really well with grasses. As you know, I keep a lot of grasses, so I tend to go for things that are late season perennials, because a lot of my grasses are miscanthus and they flower quite late in the season. So they again are clumping, they're not spreaders, and they just do their thing. They don't really suffer any sort of diseases, not for me. But again, if you've got them in a windy exposed position when they're young, they will snap. That's something I've learnt to try and avoid up at Grassy Bottom, but we can't always have what we wish for. So that is going to be absolutely a mass of flowers within the next 2 weeks. They'll all be out and it'll be a mass of flowers. Now, some Heleniums flower longer than others. This particular one has a good longevity on the flower, but there's another one. This is one that was given to me by a friend who got it off of her cousin as an unnamed variety, so we don't know what it is, but this is probably the longest flowering one I've got, and it is a yellow colour, and it's really nice, so we can't show you too much. Now, although these are up to 4 foot, there's another one here. Okay, so this is a smaller growing Helenium, and this particular one is called Butterpat. And the one behind it, that's that very same one that we just mentioned a minute ago, the one that's unnamed. So the two as a combination will be really nice together. So that's Heleniums. Now, we have this argument over Heleniums, and a lot of posh people call these Heleniums. And I don't know why, because they're actually named after Helena Troy. So there's a bit of a debate in the gardening world as to whether we call them Heleniums or Helenium. Doesn't really matter. I call them Heleniums, always have done, probably always will do. And that's just because I prefer that name. So this one is called Liatris, and it's commonly called Gay Feather and other such names. And it's a little beauty. This particular variety is called Cobalt. Now, Cobalt is a good, strong, upright one, and this one has been split last year, so I think and I feel that it's a lot smaller than it should be. I'll put on screen how big Cobalt should make, but at the moment that's about 1.5 foot, but it's beautiful. And it starts its opening flowers at the top, and then over time it moves down and it opens each flower in turn. The little clumpers, but they make fairly sizable clumps in the end, so you have to be aware of that. And what I've done, came from one plant. I've now got 6 different ones, 3 of them being here and 3 elsewhere in the garden, and I like to make clumps bigger. Again, these go well with grasses. There's a grass right behind it that's looking really good. In fact, there's a couple behind it really, so they work well with the smaller grasses rather than the taller grasses. So that's Liatris Cobalt, well worth having. And this one seems to prefer to be pollinated by other flies, as here. There do tend to be a lot of those on here rather than bees. I do find bees on them. It would appear that other flies really like them. So if you've got a wild garden, definitely worth having. One is a famous one actually. It's called Monk, and in my opinion, one of the best small ones. There were 3 other ones that were bred at about the same time, and I believe, and I will put it up on screen again, that they were all named after mountains. But it's a beauty. Now this one makes quite a sizable clump over time. Now there are 3 plants in this particular area, so it looks a lot bigger than it really is. But over time, the clump can make that sort of size, and it'll never get bigger than 2.5 to 3 foot, and then it will spread accordingly, depending on where you've got it. But it's beautiful to have. Now, I have to say that this is becoming one of my favourite monadas. Again, great pollinator. It's called Bee Balm, and it's got to be on it right now. Really nice. Now, this has longevity, this particular variety. I've got one other variety in the garden that has a similar sort of longevity. So this particular one's called Monada Gewitterwalk, and it is a truly stunning one. And I think Gewitterwalk means thundercloud, and I don't know why they call it that. I assume it's because of this actual section here. It gets taller and it almost goes up like a thundercloud, but it's a beauty. And this one has, like I said, a longevity in the flower, and it will do really well. It's only a baby, as most plants are up at Grassy Bottom. Don't forget, we've only been here 3 years. So that's got a lot of maturing to do. Now at the moment that's standing 2.5 foot tall. I don't know if he'll get taller than that. I will look it up, and again I'll put that on screen. But it's a beauty, so it's definitely worth having. I think we'll call that a day. I'll talk to you on the next one. Ta-da!